Welcome once again. This is the Grand Prix Project Podcast with me, your host, Andre, and the big bro, Thanos.
What's happening,
Yeah, I'm
bro?
here. I'm here to review. This is the Austrian Grand Prix F1 review.
Yeah, I don't even know what we're gonna review because it was I'd say a pretty uneventful race. After a certain point, just kind of like petered out, and yeah, I don't think it was really that great. But you know, we're here today, so we have to put something out and just give our views on it and see how we get on. You know what I mean? But we do have some little talking points that we've kind of like put down that we probably can we can definitely look at.
Yeah. Yeah, so do you want to run through qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, Lando Norris again. You always call him. I think the nickname for Lando is Q3 Lando. Our mistake Q3 Lando, whichever one you want to call it, because you always know, he'll look good the whole entire time, and then when he gets to qualifying, especially the last one in Q3, that man just disappear and just gets in
Lost
his
his
own
mind.
head. Yeah, just gets in his own head and mess things up. But this weekend, it seemed like he was just in a zone, And I saw someone said maybe he should the secret for him now. Maybe he should miss FP1 practice sessions. At least that we give him some that fight to push through because he has to make up for that missed session. But you have to give your hat to him, tip your hat to him this weekend, man. He did well. He did what he needed to do. That qualifying was just like different level, absolutely different level. The McLarens they were in a different planet compared to everybody else.
Yep.
And the margin, well, we know what the margin is kind of exaggerated. Well, I don't think it's exaggerated to the Ferraris. It's exaggerated to Oscar because there's no way Oscar is half a second slower than Lando. And it's a bit unfortunate that he didn't get to do that second run because he was the first on the scene for was it Gasly?
Gasly
Gasly
spin.
spinning out of the last corner, and that pretty much killed his lap, and at the same time also killed Max's lap. But Max was never on before his lap went interrupted by the double yellow. He was never really on course for pole anyway. I think the best he was gonna do is probably third. He was gonna qualify, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, he caught that double yellow as well, qualified seventh. The Ferrari, at one point, it looked like Charles was going to might actually be in the running because after his first sector, I believe he set the fastest first sector. And at the end of the sector, he was like within, I believe it was half a tenth of Lando's first benchmark time, but then finished up, when he finished the lap, he didn't improve on his first banker lap. That's how much his lap fell off. I don't know if he made a mistake or not. But Lando wasn't to know that. And I think it's a good thing that the team didn't really tell him that Oscar didn't get to do his lap. They just kind of just let him go and just let him carry on as normal. And he put in, because when he finished that sector 2 and he was like 2.5 tenths up on his first run, I was like, yo, him and the McLaren were just singing. They were just in tune, just at one. And it was just, he did what he needed to do. And, hats off to him, great qualifying. Unfortunate for Oscar that happened to him, but, still made it top 3 with that first run. Um, put the Ferrari in second again. I think both the Ferraris were out of position. Because I think if Max had actually gotten his lap in, he probably would have all qualified both of them. So I think that both Ferraris would have probably
Fourth
started
and fifth.
fourth and fifth, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Would have been fourth and fifth, but it's just one of them things. Max found himself down in what? Was it P7? Yeah.
He's
Yeah, because was it George's fifth? Lawson was sixth. Max was seventh. Bortoleto, I believe Bortoleto was eighth. It was his
yeah.
best qualifying
Gets qualified
of
of
the
the season.
season, P8. And again, to come through the rounds with that Sauber. And also you have to give a nod to Sauber, especially considering where they were coming from last year. Making it out of Q1 would have been the occasions they made it out of Q1, it was a miracle. But
Yeah.
now to make it all the way up into Q3, I mean, knocking out some big boys along the way, because let's be honest, I think Behrman qualified in the top 10. Did they get both? God, I probably should have looked up this before. But did they get both? Hold on, let me just check just to make sure. Because, I mean, even out qualified Kimi, Gasly, Alonso, Ben, Jar, you know what I mean, in what we'd probably say are much better cars than the Kick Saubers. You know, qualifying, I think just it went to plan for one person, and that was Lando. And
Yeah.
Lando needed that. He needed that because if you remember in his first run, he came in, and I believe his race engineer's name is Will Joseph. Must have said to him, "Look, Lando, that might have seemed like a bad lap, but that was a great lap. That was a great lap." So I think now they've developed a thing where they're actually kind of like they're constantly kind of like feel
Reassuring him.
yeah, reassuring him in these moments because I think in these moments he'll do something and he thinks, okay, it's terrible, and then puts pressure on himself to go out there and try and better it, and then that's where the mistakes came. But
It's what we call getting in your own head.
yeah, he got in his. That's what he's been doing all along, and you know where I stand with this. I've always said Lando has all the talent in the world, but the problem is he needs to clear up the errors he's having. And I think the moment he gets on a run, if he gets himself in a three-race stretch where he performs flawlessly, Oscar is in trouble. Oscar is in serious trouble because I don't see him relenting. And I said it in the space on Sunday. If he can carry this run, perform, because we have three more races to the summer break. We have Silverstone this weekend, then we have Spa, and then we have Hungary to end the first half of the season, which that would be what 14 races, the first 14, because Silverstone will be 12, 13, 14. So basically the first 50, so we'd be 50 halfway mark of the season. And if he can finish the season on a high, finish the first half of the season on a high, he'll be going into the summer break feeling really confident. And it's Oscar now who's going to be feeling, he's going to be on the back foot thinking, yeah, how do I stop this run? Because I have to stop this and I can't let this momentum carry on. So, as I said, qualifying went to plan for one person. It was a bit unfortunate what happened to the likes of Max and Oscar. So, we didn't really get to see what their true pace was. But, these
Yeah.
things happen. These things happen.
Just one thing I would say on that. When you say Oscar would be in trouble, I just don't see it. I don't think Lando's got that. I don't think Lando is that much more talented than Oscar for him to for me to say Oscar would be in trouble. I just don't see it. I just think Oscar overall is a better driver. That's just my just everything from I personally just think Oscar is the better driver.
We'll,
Right.
we'll,
You know. So even if Lando go on a run, I still think Oscar has it in him to match that fight and go for it. I don't
yeah, but
think he'd be in trouble. Like I just don't see it. Lando
yeah,
hasn't
but
shown me enough for me to believe that.
well, when again, maybe he'll show you. That's why I said if he can carry this run to the end of the to the summer break, maybe that run will actually might convince you. Otherwise, but when I say Oscar is going to be in trouble, is that Oscar's going to have. I mean, in the sense that Oscar's going to have to find a way to stop that momentum. He's going to now have to react. How does he react to that situation? Because so far this season, he's not been in a precarious position like Lando has found himself in at times. And then he has to recover from that. So if Lando goes on a 4-race win streak, because if Lando wins the next 3 races, he's going into the summer break leading the championship by, and if say Oscar finishes second, so that's what he's currently 15 points behind. So if
Yeah.
he wins the next three, that's what 25 points. To Oscar's what 3 8 24 54 points. And they would be leading the championship probably by about 7 or 8 points, I believe. Rough maths, just say 7 or 8 points. Oscar's gonna have going the summer break thinking, no, yeah, I had that 22 point lead with 4 races to go, and now I find myself 7 or 8 points behind. How do I recover this? It's not a massive gap, but Lando has the momentum. So how are you going to wrestle back that momentum from him? And this is where we're going to see the true test of Oscar's mentality now.
Yeah. All
You
right.
know,
Today's
you
what
say you,
Tuesday.
yeah.
Tuesday, July 1st. I see Oscar finishing ahead of him in Silverstone.
Okay. Let's wait and
So
see. Let's wait
yeah,
and see. He
I
hasn't
think
finished ahead of him.
even though the McLaren is super fast, say for instance it doesn't go true to form, and someone else is I just see Oscar finishing at Lando in Silverstone.
But let's
Let's
remember, he hasn't finished ahead of him in the last 2 races at Silverstone. So
yeah,
let's wait
this
and
is the
see.
coming up Oscar. Let's see.
Let's wait and see. Hold on. Is Oscar's second year in the McLaren or third?
He wasn't a rookie last year, so it's probably his third.
Yeah, so it would be his third. It would be
Third,
his,
because he wasn't a rookie last year.
no, it wasn't. Yeah, 2023. Yeah, so this would be his third year, and those both years, 23 and 24, finished behind Lando. So
Yeah, but yeah, one of them was his rookie year. Come on now,
okay, then we'll
one of them
ignore
was
the
his
rookie.
rookie year.
But again, because it's your rookie year, don't mean you can't beat him.
No, but yeah, you got to give rookie a certain pass. It's their rookie year.
Okay.
He's a rookie.
Well, he didn't beat him last year.
But I see it happening this year because last year Oscar is not this year's Oscar.
As the same argument can be made for Lando, but let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see.
Okay, so we did cover that. You want to talk about the turn two chaos with Kimi and Max?
Yeah, this is the race now, isn't it? Tell me what you think, because I've got a different opinion of what really happened.
And I see a lot of people making more out of it than needs to be. It's just it's just one of them situations that could happen. He arrived with too much speed, right? Tried to scrub it off, locked up, and just wiped him out. Like it happens. It could happen to anyone, right? It's typical race start type of situation. You know, he's a young rookie as well, right? So I don't think I see a lot of fuss about it, but it's just a racing incident for me. In terms of like, he's probably going to get a penalty for it if
Well,
he hasn't already.
we did get a penalty.
You got it.
You got three
Who
penalty points and a 3 place grid drop.
plays good drop? All right, then there we
Silverstone.
go.
Yeah,
So, which is warranted. It's just a mistake that he made. It's not what I'm seeing on social media to make a big fuss about. It's just one of them things that happen in racing at times, right?
hmm
And Max handled it gracefully, right? I guess people are saying it's because Max is not knows he's not in the championship. Could be that, but I just like the way he handled it because we know Max can jump out the window a bit at times, and he probably just saw it as, yo, he's a rookie, just made a mistake, move on to the next one. That's just how I viewed it.
cool, fair enough. Because we had a conversation in the space, and Kingsley is of the opinion that Kimi was just carried too much speed, and yeah, you could say he made a mistake. He made a mistake, but
Like, he
I
carried too much
think
speed. We see that.
yeah, but what
Everyone saw it.
happened? But if you watch what happened, he was trying to take avoiding action because I don't remember who it was who was in front of him. I think they braked earlier than he anticipated, and the closing speed was so great. It was a case of if I don't take avoiding action, I'm gonna run straight into back of these guys. So he took the avoiding action, and again he was still carrying speed. And by the time he braked, his front rear tires locked up, and he was pretty much a passenger. Now, unfortunately, it took Max out. And whilst, people are saying Max handled it graciously, I saw a comment that says, did he really handle it graciously or did he just accept it because he knew he wasn't in the championship fight? Because if it was a
That's the
case
thing.
if it was a case where he was in a championship fight and that were to happen to him, how would he have dealt with it? Remember what happened Hungary 2021? Didn't he get skittled out at the start in Hungary 2021? And how did he react to that? I don't think he looked at it and felt like, oh, yeah, Bottas just made a mistake, etc., whatnot.
Yeah, but
No,
but you got
yeah,
to look at it like that. This any human being, right, is gonna handle that
yeah,
differently if they're in their championship compared to if they're not. That's just human nature. Because if I'm in a championship fight where it's close and it's tough, I got to be grinding for every point to win this championship. Yeah, there's gonna be more fire in your stomach. You're gonna be more enraged when that happens,
yeah.
right?
So the comment I saw was right then, because he felt like because the comment I saw then was right. Because let's be honest, he might be this close to he was what I can't remember how many points he was off first in the
Yeah.
championship. Realistically, I think he knows he's not in a championship fight with the McLarens. For him to win the championship, it's going to take McLaren actually, like we discussed, just mentioned, don't race themselves out of a championship by the drivers taking each other out and giving max points. Case in point, what happened in Canada. I think he realistically feels like he's not in the championship. So if he got taken out of a race, it doesn't really bother him that much. But like you said, at the same time, he was a bit forgiving of what happened because again, it was Kimi. Would he have been that forgiving if it was somebody else?
And that's the thing, and that's the point. At that point, it doesn't even matter, right? This is why when people put these things on social media, right? It's like, yeah, we get that, but ultimately, in this moment, in this situation, he handled it gracefully, right?
Yeah,
It's like it's pointless in saying, well, if buts and maybes, right? In that moment when that happened, he did say something over the radio because he was frustrated initially, right?
yeah, which is pretty normal.
Right. Which is pretty normal. So now when he came out the car, he and Kimmy had a conversation and he took it on the chin and he kept it pushing. So sometimes we know sometimes Max can get So if in the moments when he's fiery, we give him stick, no matter the situation, in a situation where he dealt with it in a different way, which is what we've been asked. People has been asking for. Why can't he do this? Why can't he do that? You know, when he does it, why are you still trying to find something to criticize him to saying it's because of this or it's because of that? You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't like that. You know, you just got to just deal with the moment. He dealt with it gracefully. He wasn't belligerent. He didn't jump out the window. And you just got to be like, okay, come in the guy for this. He could get taken out of the race next week again, and it might be a different driver, and he reacts in a totally different way.
Exactly.
You know, so we just got to deal with it incident by incident,
Yeah.
right? And he dealt with this one good.
But it was a bit unfortunate though for Kimi, you know, because
Yeah,
he was having a somewhat of an okay weekend. But again, he's a rookie. He's going to learn. These things will happen, and I'm sure he'll just put it in his memory bank to just know next time. Yeah, let's just be a bit. Let's not. I can't win the race. Well, you can win some races at the first corner, but you can definitely lose it at the first corner by taking yourself out of the race. So next time it's a case of let's just make it through the first lap in one piece, and then we go from there. That's always the aim of a race. Just make sure you complete the first lap. Yes, that means you're in the race. Then you can race from there. You can't race when you take yourself out at turn
yeah.
one or turn two.
And as we're good for time because it's not on the list, but let's talk about Kimi for a little bit, right? We're good on time. So in the spaces we're talking about it, I don't even know why there's even a conversation where some folks think that Kimi is going to be under some threat
In
in
what
the
way?
Mercedes team
Threat in what sense?
in terms of like
His
based on
seat?
what we're seeing, like it's probably his seat. I'm like, I don't see that.
Nah. I don't think Kimi has to worry about his seat. Granted, he doesn't have a contract as yet,
Yeah, he's going to get a contract.
but he doesn't really have to worry about his seat because, I mean, he's what? He's behind Lewis in the championship. So that's what? P7? Oscar, Lando, Max, George, that's 4 or 5. So he's P7 in the championship behind Lewis. I mean, he's doing a damn good job for a rookie. He just only had his first podium of his career a week
Yeah,
prior.
Paul.
In podium, I said, a week
Yeah, and a pole
prior.
this season as
Yeah,
well.
and he had the sprint pole in Miami. So we've seen glimpses of, he has the speed, he has the talent. It's just now for him, it's a massive learning curve because he has to now learn how to manage these tires, and then he'll be good.
And who in the championship run right now at that issue?
Oscar.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't think that it's those people who are asking that question are basically empty barrels, and you know what they say, empty barrels make the most noise. But I haven't really seen much of it, but I know it's out there. But Kimmy's definitely not going nowhere in Mercedes. He's what, just turned 18 a couple of weeks ago. He's the long term future for them.
Just to use an American sporting phrase, he's Mercedes franchise player, bro. All right. He's their franchise player. He ain't going anywhere.
So they're gonna build around him.
Hit him with that franchise tag, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah,
Kimmy's
he ain't going nowhere. His seat is secure. He's a rookie. I think he's doing a decent job as a rookie, right? Considering that he didn't get a lot of pre-category, pre-F1 racing experience, right? He
yeah,
just
because
got
he did
one
one
season in
season
F2.
F2. Yeah, he did the kind of like I think they call it Freca. I can't remember what's the name. F3 season. I think he won that championship if I remember serving it correctly. And then he went to F2. We already know he was fast tracked into Formula One because if all things had gone well, he would have still been there in F2 this year. Lewis would be driving the Mercedes this year. But we know how that all played out.
Yeah.
He's in the seat now, and I don't think they've made a wrong decision in promoting him to the seat because he's delivering results for them.
Yeah, and that's my thing as well, right? Which is why the argument of his seat and what he's doing, right? Even though he came in with this fanfare, and Mercedes as an organization, no, total, all of them know he was fast tracked, so they had to make provisions for for the errors that he's making now. Because they knew, they were like, you know what? Even if we were not ready for him, we were put in a position where we have to put him in the car. We got to expect certain things to happen.
Yeah, and the
Right.
thing
But the
is,
good thing is that over time, as I said, it's going to come like the team is going to cocoon around him, and he's just going to come up one with that, and then he's just going to do what he's supposed to do. That's how I'm looking at the whole Kimi situation.
Kimmy's all right, man. I like him as a new driver. I think I might keep it. I'm keeping one eye at him over at Mercedes because I think they've unearthed a real gem. Is he of the same level as Lewis and Max? We'll never know. Maybe he could turn out to be of a Charles Leclerc sort of level, or even George Russell 2.0 level driver, fast, solid,
You
and
never know. We may go into a reg and it just work for him, bro. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
he gives you 5 chips. You be like, what? You know?
Well,
Never know.
I think
You
George
never
wouldn't
know.
have to. I think that personally, I think that would only happen if George is not in the team. But if George is there, I don't see that happening.
Not really, because you just got to remember, man. It's like the thing is with reg changes, you never know what's going to happen. And
Mhm.
sometimes it just happens where it's like it just suits a particular driver and it just works. And all of a sudden that driver is at 3 championships. And because it could be a situation where they're going to the new regs and George struggles and Kimi just find him like, whoa, this is easy. So you never know. So with new regs, we just got to be careful because you never know. You never know who's going to be the person that runs away.
That's true. That's
Right.
definitely
And
true.
that's the thing we got to watch for.
But
All right. Let's see it.
Kimmy's good.
Yeah,
Kimmy's good.
Kimi good. Kimi's good. He ain't going anywhere. Yeah. Charles, another podium for Ferrari.
We haven't talked about the races yet. We've skipped the race. We talked
Yeah.
about qualifying, but probably a good idea. Skip the race because, to be honest, it wasn't really all that entertaining. But the first, let's opening salvo between Lando and Piastri, and it's kind of interesting with that as well. It's the first time we've seen the McLarens push to the limit. Were they really to the limit? But they were pushing each other lap after lap after lap. I think Lando did everything he could in his power to hold on to that lead because he knew how important it was to get the first round of pit stops ahead. Because I think if he had gotten to them behind Oscar, that was race over. Because I think Oscar was marginally quicker than him in the race on
Yeah.
Sunday. But that opening salvo, though, they were just like trading laps after laps up. And the thing is, how close Oscar could follow him the whole entire time, and his tires weren't being burnt up. He didn't have any issues. There was nothing about engine overheating, brake overheating, nothing like that. He was just stuck within his wheel tracks for the whole entire time, and I'm like, yo, that's crazy. I can't tell the last time I've ever seen something like that, where you just for that many laps and you don't suffer any form of, like I said, overheating, brake issues, tire degradation, starting to fall apart. Nothing. If anything, it was Lando's tires that looked like they were going off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he did actually get past Lando. Funny enough, going into turn two, that at the end of the first DRS zone, he did get ahead of him. But
Yeah,
Lando
to
was
drop the track
smart.
too soon.
Yeah, but Lando was smart because what Lando did was when he passed him, Lando switched back to the outside, not the inside. So he switched back to the outside because he knew Oscar was going to brake and he was going to brake deep. So he was probably so his exit from that corner wouldn't be optimal. It wouldn't be the normal
Yeah,
racing
compromise
line. Yeah,
the
so he
exit.
had a compromise coming out that corner. So what Lando did by just switching back to his outside and turning and taking the normal racing line and turning into that corner, he then got himself the run as well as the DRS. Because once he was on the inside and he had the DRS, it was pretty much the turn. Is it turn four? Is it? Yeah. It was the run up to turn one, two, three. Is it turn four or turn three? I can't remember which corner it was, but you know the corner where the downhill right hander,
Yeah, I know what you're
right?
talking.
I
Yeah.
think that's turn four. So I think the run was up to turn three. Yeah, it was turn three where Lando did what he needed to do. Because once you have the inside of that corner going into turn four, and if you only need to have your front wheel level with the car next to you, which means they have to give you space. Basically means the corner is yours because Lando could then just drift out wide, brake later, and just drift a little bit later and just drift his car out wide, and just Oscar would then have to back off because if he doesn't, basically it's going to run out of track. So Lando showed a bit of cleverness in that move, you know what I mean, and held his position.
It's about
But then,
time.
well, I know you guys think Lando doesn't have any wheel skills. I don't agree with
It's
that, but
about time. It's about time. What I didn't understand was why as I was saying why they didn't pit Oscar the lap after because he came out in a 6 second hole and
yeah,
even though they asked him and he opted to go from what I'm understanding he opted to go long but I'm like same way I give Lando stick is the same way I give Oscar stick when I think he you know when I
yeah,
think
because
he
I think what he looked at is
even when it did pass, I'm like, why? You've seen this many a time. Anytime there's a track with two DRS zone, you try your best not to make the pass in the first one,
Yeah. The thing is,
right?
I think I
Unless
think
you,
I think the probably the reasoning behind it was if he had pitted on the next lap, he wasn't going to pass Lando because they were pretty much on the same tire strategy with etc. So for him to win, he'd have to pass him on the track. And from what we saw in the opening laps, it was Lando wasn't going to let him pass. So he'd need to have significant amount more performance than Lando for him to have passed.
when Lando pit, how far behind was Oscar on the first stint?
Believe it was about just under a second. I believe
All
it
right.
was. It was
Lando
just
pit
under a
stop
second.
was Lando pit stop was 3.1 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if he had pitted after, even if he came back out 2 seconds behind, that's better than 6, bro.
Yeah,
That's what I
but
was looking at.
2 seconds is still more than what he originally
Right.
went in
And the fact that
behind.
Lando had a botched pit stop, a little bit slower pit stop, even though when Oscar came, it was the same thing. I'm just saying I just didn't understand why they on a flat spotted tire. Because
Yeah,
I've never
but
seen a driver go fast on a flat spotted tire.
well, it depends on how bad the flat spot is. Some tires you can get a flat spot and it doesn't really affect your performance. It's all dependent on how bad it is. But at the same time, he was given the opportunity. They discussed it, and he chose to stay out. So obviously, he felt the flat spot wasn't really an issue for him. Wasn't going to be an issue, so he could carry on. But what didn't help him was those laps that Lando did behind him. For those, I think he stayed out for what 4 laps. So those 4 laps that Lando put behind him was pretty much like blistering pace. And I don't even think he actually went flat out. He just did enough to give himself a comfortable margin so he knows when Oscar comes out and he has that tire advantage, he's gonna have to use up that tire to catch him up. And that's pretty much what we saw happen in that second stint on the hard tires because he cut that lead down from over 6 seconds to just under 3 seconds before Lando pitted the second for his second and final stop.
Which is why I didn't like the going long in the first stint.
Yeah,
I think they
but
should have at least pitted him the next lap.
well, again,
Well, as I
that's
said, I just felt like they wanted to set the because at one point that came a little bit too close for comfort,
yeah at
right?
turn 4.
And I just felt like they wanted to separate them, and if they're going to race, probably bring it. But yeah, I'm looking at him like, why would you let him go long when he's less than a second behind him? Why don't you pit him the next lap? And then if he could jump him in the pits, or unless they didn't want him to jump him in the pits,
Well, to jump him in, I don't think he was ever going to jump him in the pits.
but
Because
that's what I'm
even
saying.
if even
He
if he
wasn't
had
given the
done
opportunity.
even if he had done a 2.5 second pit stop, that would have given him a 6/10 advantage in comparison to Lando's 3.1. I don't think it would have been enough because Lando's outlap was just a massive outlap.
But would have got part two of what we had in the first stint.
Yeah, true. But you see, when people say that, we also have to understand them. McLaren aren't racing for the fans. McLaren's racing for the team. So if they did something to kind of like soften the racing a bit,
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, bro. That's exactly when I saw it, I'm like, that's exactly what they did. Right after what happened in Australia, they cannot afford to have that happen in Austria.
Canada.
Yeah, my bad.
But
Canada.
it nearly happened.
And that's what I'm saying. So and that's when they probably realized, you know what?
Let's just call it off a
Yeah,
bit.
we're not gonna do this. Hey, we're gonna pick you and you're gonna go long, bro.
Yeah.
And then separate y'all at some point.
And the thing is, when you look at it, Oscar did make a lot of mistakes in that race. Because again, that lockup could have taken them both out. Probably not both. Probably just Lando. It would have taken Lando out. There was a couple of times he was, all running off track as well. Because you could see, I think he was desperate to get past. Because at that point in time, he had the pace to build a gap to Lando. And he wanted to use that opportunity. And again, if he had gotten a pass and he was able to pull 1, 2, 3 seconds, that was race over for Lando. Because now you're what 3 seconds behind, and Oscar has first dibs on pit. He pits with a 3 second lead. By the time you come back out, that lead's probably gone to 4 or 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
Oscar was a bit desperate at that time, but it didn't work. So we have to give her a hat to because he soaked up his pressure, soaked up his pressure on the first stint, and even in the last stint, because there was a point where Oscar was catching him, and he came over the radio, Nico Rosberg style, like, "Yo, I'm slow. Can you help me?" I think something like paraphrase, like, "Yo, I'm slow. Can you tell me how to go faster?" or something like that.
Yeah, can you help me? Guys, can you help me? Yeah,
But I know you don't like that. I know you don't like that. You pretty much said as much. But
I
at the
hate
same,
driver coaching, bro. I hate it.
I
I
hate.
hate it.
I don't like it. I don't like it to some extent.
Yeah, I hate it.
The engineer is necessary because again, the driver can't see what's going on, right? And teams don't really use pit boards so much anymore. If you can't really see what's going on, you're going to rely on them to tell you what's going on and how to help you improve your performance
Like,
because they're seeing the live data, seeing where you're slowest, where you're fastest, what you can do to improve your speed at this corner or that corner, whatever, which all of it, when added up, equals better performance.
you
So,
remember
yeah.
I'd said to you in the spaces that it's on their steering wheel, and I'd said to you that it's even in sim racing. You say it's different, but the spaces could be a bit chaotic because now we're in a more calm space. Let me tell you, it works. So on their steering wheel on the screen,
Hmm.
the same sector that you're seeing the breakdown of the sectors, it's on their steering wheel. It's on the screen,
Hmm.
right? So for instance, if I'm racing on the sim now and I'm racing whatever position I'm in, right? Each set I could set where whatever sector I go through, I could see the delta between the guy that's either behind me or in front of me. So once I go through that, I could see, okay, I'm a tenth up or I'm a tenth down, right? To the guy that's behind me. So that's the gauge that I'm using to be like, okay, I'm losing time to this guy in this third sector. The next sector, I'm a tenth up. Okay, I'm faster in this sector. So that's the gauge that you'd be using.
But
So
that's
I'm
against
thinking,
but that's against the rules. That's against the rules because what you're doing, you're transmitting another car's performance data to another car. You can't send live. You can't send live information to cars. You can only receive it from the cars. So it's against the rules. What
so
you
you're
say?
telling me that in F1 you can't see the delta between you and the car behind?
No,
That's crazy.
because again that's live information and you cannot transmit live data to the cars. The cars can only, it's one way transmission. You can only send data from the car to the pit wall. You can't send data from the pit wall to the car, which is why when they need to make changes to the brake system, the engine, or whatever it is, they have to tell the driver, so they have to manually do that themselves. So the only thing they can put on the car is, okay, you know what your delta is, you know what your lap time is, right? And the system basically will calculate and tell you are you up or down, whatever, on your previous lap time, etc., etc. But they can't
Yeah,
give you
that's
that
well. They
information
might
for
as well.
another
They
car.
might as well do it if the engineer is going to come over and give you the same information. They
No,
might as well just put it on the car.
no. But the problem with that is if you do that, right, it still don't help because again, you might say, okay, one lap he's faster than me in sector one, but the next lap I'm faster than him in that same sector, which actually happens. But the problem when you listen to what Will was telling Lando is like in he's losing the lap time. So if he's like, okay, over the whole entire lap, you two are pretty much matched for lap time, but at turn three, you're losing half a tenth to him or a tenth to him at turn three. Okay, if you don't want to lose that time, we suggest you probably do it's, and they're gonna tell you, okay, that time loss is probably like apex speed or entry speed or your exit speed or whatever it is, and they could say, okay, then you know what, brake 5 meters earlier for that corner, right? Which then means you can take more speed into the corner than you normally would, and that would negate the
Yeah, I don't
time.
like it.
But
Yeah, I don't
I mean,
like it.
but it's a game. It's a game of chess, isn't it?
I don't like it. I just strongly believe that once visors are down, you get reliability information. You use your pit board or whatever information I want to give you. I just don't like the whole telling
But
drivers where
the,
you slow.
but the thing is, they did that before. I believe it was 2010 where the ban, and I think it was even 2016. Because if you remember Baku 2016, where Lewis was having the trouble with his car, and they couldn't tell him what the issue was, and they couldn't tell him how to fix the issue, and he was pretty
That's
much.
different. You could
No,
that's different.
but what I'm saying is, it was kind of like that they didn't tell him that because again, that's kind of like they viewed that as driver coaching, and the reason why they came up with that was because of Nico Rosberg, because there was a race where Nico Rosberg was pretty much on the radio begging his engineer to like help me, similar to what Lando did, and people started to the same argument you're having. People started to like,
Yeah,
yo,
no.
what's going on here?
With
And
with
that's when they
Lewis,
came in with it, and I think they even did it in 2010 as well, if I remember
with
correctly.
Lewis,
But yeah,
if you're having if a driver is having anything that anything that's seen as some form of reliability or something that's costing him performance,
But it
whether it's
wasn't. But Lewis'
yeah.
case, it wasn't a reliability issue.
So what was it?
What it was when he pitted, they had programmed something in the CPU, right?
Yeah.
And when he went to a change to a certain setting, it affected his the power unit, and I believe it was a power unit and power delivery. So he didn't really like have full performance, but he didn't know what was causing it, right? And Nico Rosberg had the same thing when he pitted. It's something to do when they were pitting. They put the car in a certain setting when they're going to pit, right? And that triggered Lewis's problem. The reason, and so when Nico had the same problem, I'm trying to remember fully exactly ago. So it might be sounds a bit weird. But when Nico encountered the same problem, they basically said to Nico, it's something to do with the switch change you made. So Nico remembered he only made one switch change. And that was when he was going into the pit. So he basically reverted to back to what the standard was before he pitted, and that fixed his problem. The problem Lewis had was he couldn't fix his because it was pretty much programmed. To use Will Buxton's phrase, it was after Will Buxton spoke about it. It was trying to find a needle in a needle stack. So you're trying to find a specific needle in a stack of needles. That's what Lewis' problem. So it was already programmed. So it doesn't matter what switch change he made. He was never going to fix his problem, but it wasn't a reliability issue.
Okay, so stuff like that, which is an error technique, that I could live with. What I do not like listening to an engineer telling a driver, you need to do this in that corner. You need to do. I just don't like it. It just mess with the essence of racing. I just don't like it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at any of the four, with the exception of probably rally car, where you don't have pit wall to car radio transmission, this is pretty standard. Even in wet, they do the same thing. It's pretty standard. Every
Doesn't mean
other,
that I have to like it. I'm just
yeah,
because we're
but
talking about Formula One.
yeah,
I'm just
but
saying, but I just don't like it, man.
but it
I
goes
just
both
think I
ways,
just think
doesn't
that
it? Because you're saying you didn't like what they were doing it for Lando, but they also did it for Oscar to help Oscar to improve
I
his
did not.
performance to catch
I
him.
wasn't speaking about Atlanta specific. I said driver coaching. I do not like it, no matter where it's going on. Right.
Fair enough.
I just feel like in racing, once the visors are down and you start the race, it's man, his machine, and his competitors. That's just how I see it.
Fair
Right.
enough. Fair
That's just
enough.
and I think that yeah, that's just my view on it. You know.
Fair enough.
Um.
That's fine. That's fair
And
enough.
yeah. So how
But
about Lando and Oscar?
yeah, but again, like I said, just to finish off that, it was a good weekend. That was a good weekend for Lando. Apart from that little hiccup in the race, he had a clean weekend. And this is
Yeah.
what we've always asked him for. Just give us a clean weekend. I think if he has clean weekends where he stitches everything together from practice to qualifying to the race, he'll be fine. And he's done that. He's now cut the lead from 22 points, 15. He finishes, wins the next race. Oscar doesn't score. He's championship leader. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He loses the next race. Oscar doesn't score, but he finishes third. They level on points. But Oscar obviously will be leading because he has more wins than him. He's going to win it on countback because Oscar has what, 5? Was it 5 wins Oscar has?
You mean Oscar? You mean Oscar doesn't win? Because you just said Oscar doesn't score.
Oscar doesn't score any points. So if Lando finishes third and Oscar doesn't score any points at Silverstone, they're tied on points. They're going to be tied on points because I believe Oscar's won what, 5? How many races we've had so far? 11.
11, yeah.
11. So Lando's won 3. Lando won Australia. Did he win Miami? No, he won Monaco and he won Austria. So Oscar won China, Bahrain. So Oscar's won 2, 4, 5. Max has won 2, Lando 3, and George 1. Yeah. So, good weekend for Lando, and I want to see that carry on for him. I want to see if he can do that again this weekend. And if he does it again this weekend, then I can say, okay, cool. Now the championship fight is really on. It's really, really on.
Yeah, I want to see it. Bring it on.
Yeah. Because I mean, a lot of you are gonna have humble pie to eat if Lando ever get this championship over the line.
The thing is, right? If he wins it, I'm not mad. It's not like if he wins the championship, I'm mad, right? He just, as I said, I'm not saying the guy isn't talented, right? I'm just saying for the period of time that he's in Formula One, he's been building to this moment, he makes too many mistakes. That's just my problem. That's just my issue with Lando.
Again, when it comes to time to perform for a championship, this is the way the lights are brightest, and
Exactly.
So
No, so let's see.
let's see.
Let's see if he's gonna let his teammate come in his yard and box him up.
Like Lewis did Nico, but Nico got
Yeah,
one over him in the end still. But
you
anyway,
know. But yeah,
yeah.
Charles. So to finish out the podium, we had what Charles.
Yeah, another podium. So that's what is this is what his fourth of the year because he had one in Jeddah, he had one in Monaco, he had one in Spain, and this one. So this is what Ferrari's fourth podium of the year. And again, it was a pretty uneventful race from him. He pretty much lost P2 before he even got to turn one, which
Yeah,
yeah, he was the
and
only one.
he just lived in no man's land for the
Yeah,
whole entire
he
race.
was the only one in the top four that lost the position. And he was just pretty much that was pretty much it. But him like Lewis were dealing with problems that entire race. There was a lot of lift and coasting that needed to be done because they were having brake issues. And apparently some of that lift and coasting, especially on Charles's side, was because they were trying to prevent plank wear. Because again, remember they got disqualified in China. China, yeah, both got disqualified in China for excessive wear of the plank. So Ferrari again, it's another weekend where the drivers dealing with issues that just seem like what's going on. It's like every week there's an issue going on with these and if you're looking at Lewis, you listen to Lewis's onboard, it's like every week something's going wrong. Every week. I was listening to his onboard, and after probably about 5 or 6 laps, he was being told that he had to manage brake cooling and engine cooling. I'm like, after 5 laps, really, what's going on here? What's wrong with this car? Like I was saying, that Ferrari is dealing with too many issues, man. It's frustrating to see because, like we've said, they finished 14 points off the championship last year, and this shouldn't be happening. I expected more from them. I expected more from them. There's just constantly issues with that SF25. And one of the biggest issues they seem to be having, both drivers are having, it has to do with brakes. Apparently, this braking issue has been going since last year. And now Lewis has come and he's complaining about the same thing. But remember, we were talking about it in the space that the problem Lewis has is Ferrari only runs Brembo. And Lewis is used to running Carbon Industries because when he started at McLaren, I believe they were using Brembo, but he then switched him to Carbon Industries because he likes the feel of the pads and the disc. And it was the same thing that happened when he went to Mercedes in 2013. They were running Brembo, but then they switched over to Carbon Industries the following year because he liked the feel. I believe Nico was still running Brembo, but Lewis was using Carbon Industries. And I think Nico eventually switched over as well because he likes the feel of that. But the problem he has now is Ferrari's not leaving Brembo. You know what I mean? That partnership like Siamese twins joined at the head. You can't separate them. So he's just going to have to get used to that. But then at the same time, you have to ask yourself the question, is it actually the brake pads itself and disc, or is it just the Ferrari braking system that's just not up to par? Because you listen to his onboard, he was being told to use different engine braking settings because of the brakes, which means they're trying to use the engine to slow down the car more than actually using the brakes. And he was also having issues with SOC, which is SOC, which is basically the state of charge, which is his battery issue as well. That was, the whole entire race weekend was just, well, the race itself was just a case of managing issues, managing. And you're like,
Yeah,
come on, man. Even when the race was finished, Lewis was saying to Ricky Adami that, it wasn't the race that they expected and he just didn't have any pace. And he just said to him, no. You had the pace, but it was just that we had a lot of things to manage. We'll discuss it when we have our debrief. So it's just one thing after the other with this. It's like the snowball effect. I just need one small, and it just, what I mean, rolling down island just become this massive thing. So now that's something they're gonna have to work on. And Lewis has said it himself. Hopefully it's something that they can get on top of, especially for next year's car. It's crazy.
so I know you're not. You said that the Ferrari job is too big for Fred, but it seems his drivings are
Well, they're not going to throw him under the bus, are they? They're not going to come out publicly and say, yo, we don't think Fred is the man for the job. You have to remember, both Lewis and Charles drove for Fred in lower categories because Fred was Lewis's team manager when he was at Grand Prix in 2008. And I believe Was it Art? I think yeah, I think Charles drove for Art or Prem. I can't remember which F2 team he drove for, but Fred was his team boss when he came into F1 at Sauber. So Fred has that relationship with both of them. So I don't think they're gonna throw him under the bus. He even got an endorsement from Toto Wolff as well, saying that he thinks Fred is the best man for the job. But we'll know if next year comes around and they turn up with another dud, then Fred, you're gonna have to go, mate.
They're
You're gonna
saying
have to go.
they're saying these drivers are loyal to a fault.
But I mean, drivers are going to be loyal. Drivers will not come out and publicly say blame the team principal, or well, unless you name Fernando Alonso, you might do that sort of thing. But the likes of Lewis and Charles won't do that. And
Yeah.
they won't come out and publicly say, "Yo, the team principal isn't up to none." And no professional should do anything like that. If you feel like your boss is not up to the job or whatever, say that behind closed doors. Don't ever go to the public and say it in public, because you're undermining him massively. You know what I mean? That's not a good look. So Charles and Lewis won't say anything. But at the same time, if they turn him next year with a dud, Fred has to go. He has to go. Because you're talking about a team, like I said, 14 points off the championship last year. They're currently P2 in the championship. I believe they're 207 points behind McLaren. 207 points. So if you're looking at the point swing from last year to this year, it's 200 and McLaren have outscored him so far by 221 points.
Yeah.
That's not good. 207 points behind after finishing 14 points. That's not good. That's
All
unacceptable.
right. Well, that's that's a Ferrari drama. Let's see how that unfolds going forward, and then see how they go into next year too. So we mentioned briefly at the top, but now let's get into George Russell. So there's this contract talk going on about George Russell,
Mhm.
right? What do you make of that?
I know people are saying, based on what's going on with Toto Wolff and the overtures that's being made towards Max, George's seat is what's the word I'm trying to use? I'm trying to remember it. It's in a precarious situation. He's in a precarious situation because if Max decides, okay, he wants to leave Red Bull, who are you going to replace in Mercedes? Are you going to replace him, or are you going to replace Kimi? Now, it doesn't make any sense that you'd want to replace Kimi because, again, Kimi is your long-term future. And if you decide, okay, you're going to replace Kimi, where are you going to put Kimi? Because you can't replace him and keep him on the sideline, because what you're then doing is you're going to have him on the sideline, and then you're going to be in a situation you're going to have to wait until both the drivers' contract expires, and then you have to make a decision. Okay, which one of the two drivers are we going to keep, or we're going to let go?
Sideline, but we know once you go sideline, that's it for your career.
Exactly. And it's not like before where they had a partnership with Williams where, like where they sent George for 3 years. I don't think that's the case with Williams anymore. James Vowles said he's going to run Williams as its own entity, separate from having any control from,
Mercedes haven't any control over
yeah,
their drivers.
have a say who the drivers are, because obviously they supply them a power unit. But when Mercedes did that at the time, Williams wasn't financially stable as they are now, because they're finishing high in the championship. So they're making money, they're getting money, plus added to the fact that the cost cap. So they're actually now in a much better position than at any point in time in the last maybe 10, 15 years. So to them, it's a case of where they probably don't need to really rely on that Mercedes connection in terms of, okay, you put a driver in, you give us a discount on the power units, etc. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I can't see a situation where they're going to sideline Kimi. That just wouldn't make any sense. And again, if you sideline him, what does that do for his confidence? Because he'll be looking at it like, yo, what have I done? I've come in and I'm performing beyond what's expected of me. I'm seventh currently, is it seventh? Yeah, is it seventh?
Kimi?
Yeah, he's seventh in the championship. Is it Oscar, Lando, Max, George, Charles, Lewis? So he's seventh in the championship. So he's delivering you. And if you look at the points share between him and George is probably scoring 60% to 40%. That's a good ratio for a kid in his first year in the sport. So if you decide to sideline him for Max, that's going to hurt his confidence. And then you have a
I can't see
situation.
that happening.
Huh?
I cannot see that happening.
Nor I. But then you also ask the question, okay, so if they replace George, how does that affect Kimi now? Because Max is going to come in, and it's going to be a situation whereby certain decision like car development, etc., would more probably be steered in his direction. So I mean, And then we could end up with a situation like what we're currently seeing at Red Bull. Granted, I don't think Mercedes would do that. But if that were to happen, how does that affect Kimi as well? So in either situation, Kimi, the effect of these decisions will also have a bearing on Kimi.
And way how Mercedes set up the whole Kimi thing, and that's their protege, right? That's their
But George
franchise,
is also their protege as well.
right? Yeah, but they've gotten something out of George, right? They've had George for a couple of years now,
Yeah, but
right?
what have they got not to George?
I'm saying they've had George for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, George has only
So
been there since 22, so this is George third year within the team.
yeah, but my point that I'm saying, if they're replacing a driver, it's not going to be Kimi. That's just I can't see them replacing Kimi,
No, nor I. But
right?
that's what I'm saying.
So
But if anybody you replace George, you still have a problem because again, how is that dynamic going to work with Kimi? Will George look at as Kimi as someone he could bring under his wing, he could help to improve? Because you ask yourself the question, is Max trying to help Yuki right now, Red Bull?
but it comes back to what I said earlier on. We're going off things that we gotta understand, right? If we in Formula One with regulation changes and all that type of things that goes on, there's no guarantee that the driver who was good in the past two regs is gonna be as good in the next regs. So that's what I said again. Once again, you could find a situation where even if they sign Max and the new regs kick in, all of a sudden Kimi's faster, right?
I don't, I don't see that happening.
Right.
I just don't see a scenario where someone like a George or a Max, because of a new regulation change, will find himself being slower than Kimi. No, because I think that level of experience gives them that advantage over him. I think Kimi would still find
Not
himself.
really. Can you
Yeah,
remember what happened to Seb when the regs changed in 2014?
yeah,
Yeah, he struggled.
but
No one
again,
saw Ricciardo beating Sebastian.
but we're talking about you're talking about a second year driver compared to Ricciardo, who was in.
I'm just talking about outright speed. Could be a situation where the regs just suit a certain driver, whereas that even with the most experience in the world, the thing is with the experience, bro, it's not going to give you half a tenth if you find yourself behind half a tenth, half a second or 3 tenths.
But it does.
Experience will probably teach you with experience. You probably figure out, okay, if I'm in a wheel to wheel and if I understand, yeah, maybe my experience of racing this track 10 times over could give me an advantage. But if the wreck's coming and he's just super quick, like whereas it just works for him or another few more drivers, bro, yeah, that's a possibility too. That's a possibility. That's a very strong possibility.
I don't know. I don't see it like that because again, you'd think an experienced drivers, they would be more.
Bro, it just happened. Look at Lewis with the whole ground effect stuff. He struggled.
Yeah, but again,
George was, we could say George was the better driver in those regs, right?
to
In these
a
regs, right?
certain extent.
So it could be the same. The new regs would come and Kimi all of a sudden, even in his second year, is actually doing the business, and we're like, well,
Yeah, it's possible, but
it's a possibility.
I give if I'm giving a score of between 1 and 10, I'm probably giving it a 2 because you're talking about we have to look at the driver in question that he's going up against to make that assessment. So I'd probably give it a.
Yeah, a driver who could go into a new regs and the regs does not work. He doesn't understand the car. It doesn't what he likes in a car. The new regs doesn't afford him that, and now all of a sudden he's struggling and he hates the car.
Yeah,
That's a
but yeah, but
that's a
yet,
very strong possibility.
but you're also forgetting that you're talking about one of the most adaptable drivers on the grid as well. So it's not so much so as a linear sort of thing.
It's not linear about what I'm saying to you. No one thought that Lewis would have struggled in these regs as he did because Lewis is super talented, right?
Yes.
But he struggled a lot. He's still struggling to this day,
Hmm.
right? So what is to say that the new regs couldn't suit someone like a young Kimi Antonelli? That's just my whole point. I'm not saying that it's gonna, but I'm saying that's a very strong possibility where it could suit Kimi and all of a sudden he's got Max or even George as his teammate and he's whooping them.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm giving it a 2.
I'm not saying
If
minus
I'm
his
probably
experience,
it's a 2 out of 10. I'm giving it.
minus his experience. We've seen it before. It's not like we've never seen it.
Yeah, but yeah. I get where you're coming from, but I feel like the probability of that happening is it's very very low. But you know,
And
either
I'm
way.
just going off history. That's all I'm doing. I've seen
Yeah,
regulation changes and drivers struggle.
yeah. But anyway, but to go back to the George contract point, I don't think they're going to replace him. And there was an interview Toto did with Craig Slater, as well, and he asked him about what George said. And one of the questions he asked him at the end was, so the likelihood of this current driver lineup still being the same next year. And I think he said something on the lines of, Craig asked him the probability that it's more likely that, about the driver lineup, and I think Toto Wolff said something on the lines of, this driver lineup is more than likely will be the driver lineup next year. I think in some ways he pretty much kind of like pour cold water on the Max to Mercedes thing, but he might pour cold water on it for now, for next year, right?
Yeah, we need. Yeah,
So
when
if
you're
he
telling me
go,
more than likely, that's telling me that you're not sure.
I think they're probably sure, but again, in certain situations, you're gonna do due diligence, because if there's noise coming from Max's camp that gives the impression that he wants to leave Red Bull, it's only fair that you speak to him. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense that you don't speak to him, because at the end of the day, he's a four-time world champion. You can't just close yourself off and go, no, I'm not going to talk to Max because I have these two guys here. You're still going to talk. You're gonna put feelers out there to see where he is, and I think that's what he said. They're putting feelers out to see where Max is, what his future plans are, where he's, you know what I mean. So the likelihood is it's Kimi and George next year. I don't think they're going to go into a regulation change with a different driver lineup. So, and again, Mercedes has never provided George with a car good enough to win a championship, right? And I think to replace him with Max in some ways would be unfair, but we know what this sport is like. It's a
It's close,
cutthroat
man.
business. It's a
Yeah, it's a cutthroat business.
Mercedes as a team, it's a principled team. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't see them actually saying, no, we're going to get rid of, sorry, George, we're letting you go for Max. And you have to remember, George came through the Mercedes program and he's doing a damn good job. In all fairness, this conversation shouldn't even be had. George should have actually gotten his contract already.
Principled until there's a four-time world champion available.
Yeah, but
And then you
again,
see people got principled
yeah,
in this
okay.
sport. I'll put nothing past them, bro.
Yeah, but here's my argument with this, right? And I commented on a post on my X account this morning, or Twitter, right? Where someone said Max is a four-time champion. George has the potential to win you a championship. But my thing with that is Max can only win you a championship if the car is good, right? If the car is not there to win you a championship, he's not going to win you a championship. So even though he's a four-time champion, you're bringing him in with a potential to win you a championship. It's the same potential George has, but we've never seen George given the tools to win the championship. For me, it's if the Mercedes next year is the car to beat, and George fails to deliver, right, and ends up losing the championship, be it to Kimi, even though that's very unlikely, or to another team, a Max, a Lewis, Charles, Oscar, or Lando, then you're going to be like, yeah, George, we don't think you're the guy then, because we gave you the best car and you fumbled it and you didn't win the championship. So now you can say, okay, you can go and bring Max in, because you know for certain that George can't win you a championship. So whilst Max is a four-time world champion, Max still won't win you a championship unless you give him a car. And it's the same argument you can use for George. George can't win you a championship if he doesn't have the car to win you the championship. So saying Max is a four-time, okay, cool, you're a four-time world champion. Lewis is a seven-time, eight-time world champion, and he's in Ferrari. He can't win you a championship because Ferrari hasn't given him a car to win the championship. See what I mean? So it's the
Yeah,
same argument for Max.
I see where you're coming from with it, right?
Mhm.
However, this is not really a contest. This is like the way I look at it, right? Is you're correct. What you said, I cannot say anything better. But what I will say is just know that any team in any sport, when you got whether you've given your current crop the team or a car to win a championship, when there's a four-time world champion available, a possibility, and there's a strong possibility he's going to be available, hey man, that's when principles go out the window.
Well, again, but it also depends on the team that you're talking about. You know what I mean? If it's a team that historically has shown that they're not scared of making driver lineup changes, then I can understand that's where the principle will be thrown out the window. But we're talking about Mercedes here. They've always been a team that operates within a certain dynamic. You know what I mean? And I don't see them doing a situation where they do George that dirty. You
I
see what I
do.
mean?
I do. I
Fair
do.
enough.
The thing is with sports and business, what you're looking at is that's what we see on TV. All of them will screw someone over to get what they want, bro.
I don't think so, because here's why I'm going to use an example. George was ready to drive for Mercedes from 2021,
Yeah.
but they didn't replace Bottas because they
Bottas
felt
was Max though.
it doesn't matter. But Bottas is not George, so it's not a case of what I'm saying here is it's not a case of because it's Max or whatever. I'm talking about principal team, right? How they operate. They could have replaced Bottas in 2021 because remember Bottas was only on 1 year contracts. They could have replaced him because
What
George
do you
was
think?
ready. George was
Okay.
ready to go in the team, but the team felt a certain kind of like loyalty to Bottas, and they felt like you know what he deserves this one last opportunity, so they didn't replace him. And if you notice what they did, they worked behind the scenes to get Bottas a seat in Formula One before they made any announcement. So what they waited, so once they got Bottas that seat at Sauber, whatever they call themselves at that last year, I can't even remember, right? He then announced that he was leaving Mercedes. That it was announced, and then once that was done, that's when they announced George. They could have been like Christian Horner, do what Christian Horner did to Seb in 2014 when he went to the Japanese Grand Prix, when he pretty much came out and told everybody that Seb would be joining Ferrari in 2015. See what I mean? So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, you have to look at the people and the team that is involved and how they've always operated. Mercedes as a team has always operated in a principled manner where I don't think they're going to do George like that. Because again, the thing is, did you give George a fair shot? Because George has never been in a position where he could challenge for a championship. So
Yeah, I see
why
where you're
would you want
coming
to
from.
replace? So it's a case of okay, let's build George the car. We give George the car. All right, George, we've done our part. Now it's up to you. And if he doesn't deliver, then Mercedes can say, well, you know, we stuck with you for X amount of years, right? We know we didn't have the right car. We built you the car, gave it to you, but you didn't utilize it. We're going to have to. And I think that's why I said if Max moves to Mercedes, it would be for 2027 because then he'll see what Mercedes has built, right? And Mercedes will know what George can do. But then again, there's another flip side to that. And this is the flip side because if they build the car next, if you know the rumors are true and they're the team that comes out with the best car next year, right? And George goes ahead and wins the championship, what reason would you have to sign Max?
Yeah, that's different.
But you see my point because what it proved now is Mercedes has now delivered because they've said we've never given George a car that can compete for a championship. And if you finally gave him one in 20, so if you re-sign him for 26 and you gave him one and he delivers you a championship, then you look at it like, well, we don't really need Max then because George
Well,
is proving to us that he can win us a championship and that's what
and
we
once
need.
again, and we've seen that happen recently where it doesn't always work out like that.
No, I know. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm showing
What
putting
I'm
a
saying, because
scenario
you got to
across.
remember the same thing that we saw happen. It could be a situation where Toto Wolff just think like Max is the best, and I want to see him in a Mercedes, right? That's a thing, which is what we're seeing playing out now in MotoGP. It was the same kind of the same scenario with Martin, right?
No,
He
that's a
won the chip.
different. I think that's a different
No,
scenario.
but I'm saying ultimately it's Ducati. Even if he was on a Pramac, they're all in a Ducati situation, right?
Yeah, but
So it's the same way how Gigi was looking at Mark like, yo, I want to see that guy in my motorcycle. It's the same thing Mercedes could be
yeah, but
saying, yo, I want to see Max in our car.
remember what I said to you, and we'll probably discuss this another time. So we're just crossing paths here. I remember I said to you, Mark pretty much forced Ducati's hand into signing him because remember what Mark said. Mark said he's not going to ride for the Grassini satellite team, even if they give him a 2025 bike. He wants to be in the factory team. So because there was even a report even before that whole thing kicked off that Grassini had is it Grassini? Grassini had resigned with Honda with Ducati, and they were going to get a GP 2025 bike, and it was going to go to Mark. But Mark pretty much said, "No, I don't want that. I don't want that because I
No,
think the
that's inaccurate. That's inaccurate. That's
okay,
inaccurate. It was supposed to go to Pramac, not Grassini.
yeah, sorry,
Grassini was
my bad.
never going to get 2025. He was on the premise of if he went there, allegedly, they would have stayed with the Pramac would have been on Ducatis this year.
But he would have been on a GP 25.
Yeah, but that's just a semantic. I'm just saying that ultimately what it came down to, Gigi wanted Marquez on the latest spec, greatest thing that he's got going on, right?
Yeah, but what I'm
And
saying is at that point in time, the argument was you just said it. It was that Mark would be on that same factory bike, but in a satellite team. But Mark said, "Yo, I don't want to be in a satellite team on a 25. I want to be in the factory team
yeah, but I'm
on a
saying that's the
factory bike."
semantics of it. Ultimately, Gigi wanted Mark on the latest spec.
Yes,
And
yeah,
it's the same thing I'm saying. Mercedes could be like, that's the kid that we think we want to see what he would do in our car. right? That's just what I'm saying. Like, so I could see because I've seen it happen. I'm like, yo, there's a possibility too. Like, these are all motorsport. They're all barbaric. Like, there's no principle amongst these guys. Like, ultimately, if they want what they want, they're gonna do it, and they're just gonna ask for forgiveness later. That's all I'm saying. They're gonna sin now and ask for forgiveness later. So even if they decided that, hey, I want to move George out of here, people are gonna have, and if Max comes in and win them a chip, all of a sudden they're forgiven.
Well, like I said, I don't know. I don't think they would be forgiven per se. People would still be looking at like, yo, you did George do it. And again, like I said, I think it depends on the team we're talking about. We can see that scenario played out in Red Bull because that's what Red Bull are doing. That's Red Bull.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it. It's not only Red Bull. Red Bull is just the only one that's bold enough to find himself and be like, that's what we want, that's what we're gonna do.
Exactly. So,
The moment Mercedes find himself in that type of situation where they think that, yo, this is what we want, you're gonna wonder, oh, where did your principle go? It's just sports. They just
but
have
that- but
different
that- but that- but
situations.
then apart, that's what I said to you when I used the Bottas situation part as an
None
example.
of the guys you're talking about, none of them is one of the greatest drivers to ever drive a F1 car. None of them are.
Yeah, but what we're talking about here is they want you want to see what George could do in your car. They could have moved him out in 2020 because you saw what he did in the Sakir Grand Prix in 2020.
Never, yeah, but ultimately, right? We all know George is not a Max. George doesn't even get spoken
We
of in
know.
the same
Let's stop.
conversation.
Let's stop trying to compare him to Max. We're talking about here a team hold
I
the
get
upper.
that, but but I'm saying to you now, if a four-time world champion, one of the greatest drivers to ever drive a F1 car, all of us becomes available, you'd find that if they really want him, principles go through the door. That's all I'm saying to you, right? Because this is one of the greatest drivers ever, whether you like him or not, right? Whether people like Max or not, he's one of the greatest to ever drive an F1 car. So if he becomes available, that scenario kind of changes the principles of Mercedes because we could have a sin now and get the four-time world champion, or we could play be principled and he goes to a rival team and then whip our ass for another 4 years. Pick your poison. That's all I'm saying. We just ain't seen Mercedes in that situation where they have to make that cutthroat decision yet, right? And if it comes down to that, I can't see the principles winning. That's all I'm saying. You
Fair
know,
enough. Fair enough. But like I said, let's see what happens. But I think next year George will definitely the lineup is definitely going to be George and Kimi next year. The whole Max thing then comes back around after we see where everyone is in 2026.
yeah, I could live with
And
that.
then once everyone knows where they are in terms of performance wise,
Then you're gonna see which driver really wants to go where too, because it's
yeah.
not just about the
And the
team.
thing is, it creates a problem for Max. This creates a problem for Max, and here's the problem: because if he jumps too soon, it could be a problem. It could be he made a wrong choice because it's very possible Red Bull could be the car to beat next year, right? And if he jumps to Mercedes this year and Red Bull is the car, Red Bull goes, okay, then cool, we're going to go for George, assign George, right? And the Red Bull is the car to beat, and George goes on to win the championship. Max is going to look at like, damn, I jumped too early. I should have waited. But then if he doesn't jump, stays at Red Bull, Mercedes is the car to beat, George goes ahead and wins the championship, he's going to be like, damn, I should have jumped.
Yeah, it's just one of them. So which is why I'm not super. This is why I'm not overcomplicating the argument. I'm just saying that if he becomes available and Mercedes think that this guy's available and they really want to see him in their car, they're gonna take him.
Yeah,
And
I
that's what the
think,
principles that we think Mercedes have will go. And I totally understand it. It's sports. I don't take it personal. I don't get super emotional about it because I've seen in all different types of sport where it's a cutthroat business. Teams will drop you, they'll pick you up, they'll spit you out, chew you up, shit you out. Like it's just sport, bro. Like so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Like, I'm never surprised by certain decisions. But yeah, but that's it on that. And
yeah.
we need to wrap this now.
Yeah. So, but before we go, just some honorable mentions. Liam Lawson, his best. I think believe this was his best weekend of the year so far because
Yeah.
he finished in sixth. That's his best point scoring of the season because he scored 4 points in Monaco and he finished sixth, which is 8 points. I think he also qualified well as well. I believe he qualified in the he qualified. Where did he qualified? He qualified sixth and he finished sixth. So, damn, looking at it, the only person in the top 10, top six cars that finished that actually lost positions was Charles. Charles was the only person that lost a position from his original start position. I've given Liam Lawson a bit of stick at the start of the year because I just feel like, yeah, you're not that guy. You're not that guy. For him to qualify sixth finished sixth. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it also matches his teammate. Yeah, it matches Hajar's best finish as well, which was in Monaco. He also finished sixth. So right now, Liam Lawson is on what, 12 points? And Hajar is on, what's that, 10, 16, 20, 21 points. So he's only 9 points off his teammate, and he came in what?
How much
Japan?
is Yuki on?
Yeah, the Yuki stock has fallen, man. Yuki's on 3, 5, 9, 10 points.
I feel
So
bad for Yuki because he picked up the poison chalice. But
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna wrap this. I'm not even gonna go into that because I don't want
yeah.
to push this so
And
long.
also, and no, we've got one more as well. They kick steak
Bartolo,
sub or whatever they call themselves. Again, it's a double points finish for them as well. I think that's the first time they've scored double points in God he knows how long. I can't even because Bortoleto scored 4 points, Hulkenberg scored 2 points, so Bortoleto finished ahead of him. I mean, that's the first time they've scored that many points. Basically, both drivers have finished in the points in God he knows how many years. So, they get an honorable mention as well.
all
And
right.
sorry,
Sure.
the Yuki stock has plummeted in the stock
What
market.
what the Yuki thing showed though is that it's been the car all along.
Yeah, because they said it. Christian Horner said it. The problem is not the drivers; it's the car. We need to fix the car. But
Car. So if they're saying that, it means that they should just allow Yuki, bro. Like, and just let him go into next year because if you're admitting that it's your car, what do you expect him to do? Right? You had Perez, who was a known race winner. The cars got him the hell up out of there. Putting Lawson.
Lawson
Car
was
got him
gone.
up out of
Was
there. Now you
gone
got
after.
Yuki.
Was gone after one race.
Yeah, so
2 races. He did Australia and Japan and China, and he was gone.
but yeah, let's see what happens with that. But yeah, just to wrap it up, you want to rate the race?
Yeah, 4.5 out of 10.
4.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
4.5 out of 10.
There
That's
wasn't
fine.
really much to talk about apart from the McLaren boys trying to take lumps out of each other. That was pretty much it. Bortolet, just kind of like swing back on Bortolet a bit. He could have finished higher. He could have finished what? Where did he finish?
Could have finished ahead of
He
Alonso.
could have finished ahead of Alonso. Yeah, but I don't think it's just the leader. I think if he had made the move, he tried to go for the move, but backed out of it going into the second after the second DRS zone. So he wanted to into turn three. So he wanted to get it going into turn four, but he didn't get it, and that pretty much kind of like he probably should have taken it once going into turn three, but Alonso probably would have gotten past it. But then at the same time, Alonso tires were something like 16 laps older than his, so he probably should have gotten it. But I guess Alonso is his manager.
After that happened, I think the lap cars was saved Orlando.
Yeah.
The leaders coming through.
And
It
apparently,
was
did
it
you
would
hear
have
what
happened.
Jonathan Wheatley said? Did you hear what he said? Said he texted Zach Brown saying to tell his drivers do not lap them. Zach Brown wasn't even at the track. So he was
Yeah.
trying to put, so it's kind of like he thought Zach Brown was Michael Massey.
Let's
Yeah, but on that note, yeah, I give it a 4.5 out of 10. It wasn't really that
give it a little
much.
5 piece.
All right, then cool. You
Give
can
it a
give it
little
five.
5 piece.
I'm not that
Yeah, but
generous.
yeah, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. It went longer than we wanted to, about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That's a wrap on the Austrian Grand Prix, 2025 Austrian Grand Prix review. Honda took the win, Piastri second,
Charles
Leclerc
third.
third. Yeah, so next race is this weekend, right?
Yep. Silverstone.
Silverstone, British Grand Prix. All right.
Return to the home of arguably one of the greatest wins and most emotional wins in Formula One history. Lewis
Gonna put it out there.
Hamilton's Lewis Hamilton win last year will never be forgotten.
I'm putting it out there that I'm not sure who's gonna win, but I see Oscar finishing ahead of Lando.
Lewis is going to
All right.
defend his
I'll
title.
put it out
Lewis
there.
is going back to back.
Yeah, let's see if lightning strike twice the same place.
No, he's driving for Ferrari, dude. Dying.
So once again,
If anything, lightning's going to strike his Ferrari.
yeah. Once again, this has been the Grand Prix Project Podcast. Thank y'all for listening. Appreciate everyone that listens. Please leave your comments. Please follow us on X at the Grand Prix Project Pod, the Grand Prix Project Podcast on Instagram, and the Grand Prix Project on YouTube.
Like
Right.
and share our thing as well, please.
Yep.
Get us out there.
Just episodes in, so we're working. So yeah, thank y'all.
And we
Thank
out.
you for listening. All right. Peace.